Hey everyone, welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. This episode we're going to be studying a piece by the established 3D artist known as Davish.jpg. This episode we're going to be talking about near-symmetrical harmony, we're going to talk about the imitation of inspiration, and we're also going to talk about the immense influence of the movie and video game called Tron. So let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this work, we're really with the lone subject kind of walking towards this blinding white pyramid in this kind of vast, endless techscape, right? The viewer's first impression is likely one of shock due to the immense degrees of light in the composition before us. And so you'll see, of course, the placement of our subject certainly makes that hard to miss. Also has this kind of darker silhouette that is the perfect kind of dark on light contrast against these lighter backings, right? That's also important. Always going to catch that eye there. What you'll also notice are these intense degrees of texture, right? They're certainly most striking in the pillars here. They add a bit of visual energy, and what you'll also notice is this kind of reflective, sleek flora that also reflects the entire ground there and translates all the visual energy and kind of mirrors it in that result. I think that's also important here. So when we look at this work, we see about three main regions, right, for analysis, right? We have that kind of reflected floor we just talked about. We have the horizon of the plane of the floor itself. And then we have this kind of endless grid backing that the composition just kind of fades into, right? Certainly always going to catch the eye there. What you'll also notice is a near symmetrical format here. So of course, not perfect symmetry. There is a very small bit of variation in kind of the reflections and such, but of course it is near symmetry. It is very close to perfect symmetry. The result of that is going to be a very ordered and a very balanced visual experience. So that's always going to feel, very harmonious in its final result. What you'll also notice is a bit of balance due to the triangular nature of this large prism, right? Certainly the most dominant place in the composition. It just strikes the eye instantly. You're really not going to miss it. When we see a triangular order, that's always going to feel balanced, right? It's not top heavy. It doesn't seem like it's going to like fall or anything like that. It is very balanced and it feels quite ordered in that result, right? And so what we're looking at is actually a piece inspired by the movie and video game entitled Tron. And Tron really first came out in about 1982. I believe it came out with the game as well in the same year. We're going to talk a little bit about Tron real quick, see what we can learn and bring some in here. Alright, so I brought a bit of graphics here so we can learn. So what you'll see on the top is actually the original movie. That's going to be from 1982. And what's on the bottom here is going to be the revival. It's going to be in 2010. That is Tron Legacy. Both, of course, had an immense amount of impact, right? They inspired everything from fashion to music video to other films and beyond. The impact of it in the science fiction realm, it cannot be understated. And Tron is really good at immersing you within that digital environment, right? We go from the perspective of Flynn, who I believe creates games for a mega corporation. And what we see here is Flynn actually is kind of teleported into that game. So there's this sense of incredible immersion in the story of Tron. And of course, like I said, it inspired so many different works of art after that. So it's kind of interesting, right? Especially in 1982 when it first came out. It really informed a lot of the digital genesis that was happening at that same time, right? 1982, you got to think about that. Computers were coming into the home en masse, and then later in the 90s, we had the real birth of the consumer internet. So, Tron in 1982 really was the perfect timing for that digital genesis all the way leading today. So 30 years later, they did revive that, and I actually saw this as a kid. Really, really, really caught my eye, of course, that kind of digital genesis. But aside from that, immersing you within this virtual landscape, it was absolutely amazing, incredibly cinematic, and Tron is something that is always staying in my mind, right? And so this work is inspired by Tron. We certainly see a lot of inspiration, right? You have that kind of blue aesthetic, we certainly note that. We have that kind of digital landscape as well as the kind of lone hero who's walking through this area. So all of those things you could connect directly back to Tron, and like I said, Tron had an absolutely amazing influence on the world of sci-fi and just art in general. Alright, so what also likely caught your eye is going to be this incredible backing, right? Always catches the eye. It really reminds of the kind of early 3D rendering programs, if you guys know what I mean. One thing we see it most often with is kind of synthwave or the vaporwave aesthetic. We see this kind of endless grid, right? It really shows that digital landscape and trying to convey that. So absolutely does an amazing job. It certainly catches the eye and reminds of synthwave and of course the virtual landscape as a whole. So a little bit earlier, we talked about the inspiration that came from Tron to really create the work before us here. And so with this in mind, I want to ask you guys, what is some piece of art or a movie or a film, anything that you saw when you were young that can be considered a piece of art that had a major impact on you? Ask yourself that and you may find a lot of insights, right? Everything from the impact to today to how it informed your perspective in the past. There's so many different things that you could really find out there. So we absolutely love this piece here. This is actually a 3D art piece, so it was created in the Blender rendering program program, and it was then edited as a mixed media piece in Photoshop as well. So mixed media piece, we absolutely love that, and we're going to be adding it to the mixed media gallery as well. I truly hope y'all enjoyed today. We talked about so many different things, from near symmetrical harmony, triangular order, talked about these three regions, texture, the impact of Tron, imitated inspiration, so many different things we hit on today. I truly hope y'all enjoyed. If y'all did, go check out the original artist, Davish.jpg, always doing some really good stuff in the world of 3D art, of course, the digital render. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see y'all on the next episode. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.